The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Pastor Mai, good afternoon. Welcome to Mannin Line on Manx Radio. Your chance to have your say. Four different ways. You call 66 13 68, text 166 177, WhatsApp 166 177, or email studio@manxradio.com. And lots on the horizon. I just wonder what your opinion is of what happened yesterday, the no confidence motion to Keys. And what do you think it did for us? Did it do any good? Has it done any good? Does it take us anywhere new? Is it going to help us along the way? Certainly cost money, of course, because not much got done yesterday, apart from everybody talking about the Council of Ministers and the Chief Ministers and the plan for the future and what have you. So, just any thoughts on this? Where do we go from here? What does it say about what we're going to do in the future? And lots more things. Of course, tomorrow, by the way, the Treasury Minister's on Mannin Line. Treasury Minister wants to start this national conversation about the long-term future and sustainability of our National Insurance Fund. This report that's out warns the fund's going to be exhausted, gone, nothing in it in just over 20 years' time. So by the mid-2040s, that will be it. Of course, it may be that you and I won't be here anymore, but it will be somebody else's problem, and one that we know about, and one that's on the back burner. So anyway, tomorrow, Alex Allenson, MHK, is going to be on. Dr. Allenson will be on, and we'll talk about that and anything else you want to talk about with the Treasury Minister. So, Tim Glover put forward this motion yesterday. Arbury, Castletown and Maloo, Tim Glover said he thought it was necessary, a necessary risk. According to Tim Glover, a necessary risk to, well, what do you think it did? I think it's genuinely worth raising the point, although we can end up navel-gazing about this. His confidence motion in Alf Cannon was defeated 18 votes to 6. Now, members were also critical of Mr. Glover in this motion. But again, I'd like to hear what your thoughts are regarding this. It was great theatre yesterday, great political theatre, and everybody has an opinion. But Mr. Cannon was at pains to point out, obviously, you can talk about personalities all day long. We all do. Everybody loves to talk about personalities. But at the back of all this is money and the future of the Isle of Man. This is what Tim Glover had to say.
I knew, bringing this motion, I was going to get a kicking. It generally happens to somebody who brings a motion of this type to any parliament. They are the one who is going to face a bruising encounter. But I was prepared to take that because this needed to come to the House. I didn't seek a quick headline, as some have said. I did one interview in the lead into this debate. I even gave acknowledgement that we could do it in a week's time, so everybody had time to prepare, because I felt it was really important that we did that. I didn't seek a seconder. I let that evolve naturally. I didn't lobby. The main thing was to bring this debate here because it had to happen. My door was open if people wanted to talk. Some did, some didn't. But I didn't actively lobby. We needed to have this debate. I was even honest in interviews, in the interview that I did, that I didn't think it would succeed. But the debate needed to happen. And somebody had to have the strength, let's put it that way, to bring that here.
That was Tim Glover talking about why he did what he did yesterday and exactly Well, the fact you heard him say he didn't lobby, he didn't talk to anybody else, he just put it out there and let it happen. Now, some may say that that's naive politicking, that if he knew what he wanted to happen, then he could have gone out and lobbied people and got people behind his motion. He didn't. It was almost like a straw poll, like an opinion poll. Members were critical of what Tim Glover did. Here's what happened.
To be clear, the motion may reference the Chief Minister, but for the reasons I have given, this is effectively a motion of no confidence in the Council of Ministers. So if there is support today for this motion, I reiterate my intention to stand down.
Over the past couple of years, there have been murmurs of discontent amongst backbench members, as well as from ministers who have stepped down from Council of Ministers for various reasons. And I have more reason than most in this House to press the green button at the end of this debate here today, especially given the anguish and the hurt that the Chief Minister inflicted upon my family and my friends and myself personally during 2022 and 23.
And that was Rob Callister, MHK, and you heard Jane Paul Wilson as well. And there were offers of resignations. Tim Johnson said much the same thing. But again, I just stress, where does it take us from here? Now, what do we do? Is this, obviously, there were 6 people who voted, 6 MHKs who voted against, for the motion. Claire Christian of Douglas South, Julie Edge from Onchan, Joni Farragher from Douglas East, Tim Glover, obviously, Arbury Castle, Town and Maloo, Laurie Hooper, Ramsey MHK, former Health Minister, and Chris Thomas, Douglas Central MHK. Those were the ones who voted for the motion of no confidence. The rest voted against it. So what do we do? Now, does Mr. Cannon move on anew with all this? Dick dropped a note in just to say, I hear Alf Cannon's thinking of making Tim Glover Health Minister, to thank him for bringing the vote of no confidence. Politics is a dirty business, says 528. Sounds to me like lots more MHKs were moaning, and they bottled it when they saw how it was going. They chickened out. Is that so? Do you think that's right? Do you think they chickened out? Or do you think they looked over the precipice? Oh, just regarding the wind farms, says Gilly, other subjects, if it goes ahead, can we get confirmation that whoever signs the contract signs for a fixed price, so we then don't end up with the same fiasco as the Liverpool terminal? Gilly, is this the one? This will be Erie Stain, I think. Do you think we should? Obviously, Orsted are doing their own thing, and they'll take care of all that. A note in from Steve, who just said, you get complaints from certain people one day about unknown immigrants all over the Isle of Man. Have we had that? Anyway. Then the police suggest ID, and exactly the same people complain about Big Brother. This is a perfect example of why you can't reason with a conspiracy theorist, says Steve. Any thoughts? Although figures don't add up for the wind farms on sea and land, it's the right approach with green energy, says Big John in Ramsey. It'll cost money whatever we do. There'll be a lot of money that will have to be spent regarding the wind farms. Obviously, Orsted will be spending their money on their wind farms, and we'll have to be spending our money on Erie Stain. If it happens, when it happens. Whether the MHKs like it or not, Tim Glover was representing the feeling of a large section of the Manx public, says 502. At least the Chief Minister is reminded that the Isle of Man isn't run by a dictatorship. Do you really think that's what Mr. Cannon thought? I mean, it is tempting to look at somebody who heads any organisation and say that they are a dictator, but it was mentioned many times yesterday that the Council of Ministers is ruled by consensus. Everybody agrees. People can fall out, people can disagree, but they come forward with a consensus decision. Now, it may not be one that they all like, but you have to have some sort of consensus. So, well, we'll see. Let's get to the lines now. And Juan's on now. Hi, Juan. We'll find Julian in just a few moments' time. I think we've got Julian now. Hi, Julian.
Hi, Andy. Have I gazumped Dewan, have I?
I think he put his phone down.
All right, okay. Well, I'll try and be brief and they'll give him some time. Just a quick one on yesterday. Fully back Stu Peters. I think this crazy amount of money towards the net zero thing, I think we just need to, scrap net zero. I'm sorry, but there's so many problems these days. And, that interconnector, I was told by the MUA, at least £220 million. The wind farm at Erie Stane, 40 million. Is it now 45 million? It's gone up another 5 million. Did I read yesterday or something?
Who knows now? It seems to go up from day to day.
It does. And it's not going to do anything. I mean, the power station, I was told by a senior member of the MUA that just that small part, the electrical bit that we use, not all the 80%, which is our heating, a half of that is the households, and the other half is commercial, like the hospitals, schools, government buildings. So it'll be a fraction of the houses. So it's a half of a fifth, and it's not even a half of a fifth, if you see what I mean. It's a tiny amount. So, it's just a ridiculous thing. I also I was thinking, geothermal. We were talking. Graham, I think, sent you a text yesterday. Was it?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Was it 5 geothermals you said yesterday? The borehole for that, a couple of million, or indeed Kroger Gas. Don't forget the power station, and they told me this as well at the MUA Care thing, it's £20 million a year in gas for the power station. So if either geothermal or gas or both work, well, it's $2 million investment to try and see if we can get it. And if we do, we'll be saving $20 million a year just by having that.
So no politician appears to have taken up the cudgels with this. Nobody among the 24 MHKs says we should have a bash at geothermal. I wonder why that is.
Don't know, but I want a second opinion because I've actually spoken to 2 retired drilling experts who were down in South Africa, and also another one's done some geothermal in New Zealand. And they're saying there are no formations that can't be found some way these days using the technical drilling stuff that they've got these days. It's just nonsense. So I think we need a second opinion on that, really.
Well, again, somebody would have to go, unless somebody wants to do it privately and has got a couple of million they can throw into this, but somebody would have to go before Keys and Tynwald and pitch for this. And obviously the people they'd have to approach, Julian, are at Treasury, and they far more used to saying no than yes.
That's right. But, geothermal is the greenest of all. You've just got your boreholes and, you have it in a field somewhere and, you just hook it into a steam generator and away you go, more or less.
And I'd like to know whether that's the reason that there isn't more of it, isn't that there doesn't appear to be millions and millions of euros and dollars and pounds in running a geothermal system. It doesn't appear to be fit into the capitalist model.
Well, this is it. Although there are 1,000 projects around the world going on at the moment, I'll just nip on quick about what I was going to say. BBC, a title of their news yesterday, assisted dying could lead to coercion. UK Health Secretary Wes Streeting is worried that legalising assisted dying could risk ill people feeling guilt-tripped into ending their own lives. He also feels that the palliative care system is not where it needs to be. And I notice on October 7th, which is just some days ago, Manx Radio reported that hospice currently only receives a quarter of its funding from government, so about 1.7 million, but its total requirement is 7 million, just under. So the remaining 5 million is still from voluntary donations.
Yeah.
So we're in a similar position to what Wes Streeting is worried about in the UK, aren't we? I mean, that's a quarter of the funding is provided by government for palliative care. How can that be a choice if it's not up to the mark? And there's been plenty of news reports from Manx Radio with hospice saying they're going to have to cut back services because they haven't got the funding available.
So, I mean, what are you saying? Do you think the government should put more money into hospice?
Well, they would have it if they didn't have silly vanity projects trying to save a 40th of a millionth of 1 degree putting the Isle of Man under the blooming cemetery, effectively financially. I mean, 300, 400, 500 million on a bunch of windmills that are going to do hardly anything. I mean, the amount of energy that we need, and then you're going to add in heat pumps from January that are going to each one take in the equivalent electrical energy of an entire year per house. So you're going to double your electrical needs just with your thing, and then you've got EV charging if we have to go to electric vehicles, although that's looking less and less likely as days go on. So, the whole thing just looks... If you sit back and think about what we need as to what it will provide, I mean, by the time you finish, we could have about 2 power stations for the amount of money those 3 windmills are going to put up.
Well, hindsight is very easy, but looking into the future is more difficult, and we don't actually know. We don't know where we're going to end up, do we, really, Julian?
No, but 400 million would certainly help at the moment with the problems, wouldn't it? Especially if it was used wisely. OK, all right, good to hear from you. Thanks, Andy. Cheers.
Thanks for that. And Stephen joins us now on Mannin Line. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, Andy, and good afternoon, listeners. Talking about yesterday and a lot of the hand-wringing that was done about how dare this motion be brought, I think there were some parts missing from a lot of the debate yesterday was the feelings and the feedback from various industries on the island. And I can name a few, because the PAG meeting that I attended, agriculture highlighted some serious concerns that they've got. Hospitality raised serious concerns. John Webster, who spoke about the business community and with serious concerns, and the Chamber of Commerce have also spoken about the current island plan is giving them serious concerns. Now, it was disappointing that not many people spoke about these various industries within the island yesterday that have raised concerns, and this has to be laid at the Council of Ministers table, and the Chief Minister and the Treasury Minister. And for people to say it was simply a vote about Alf Cannon, well, I think that's wrong. It is a vote, really, and exasperation about the current strategy and direction that COMIN, the Treasury Minister, and the Chief Minister is taking us in. And what I would hope that comes out of this, of that, is that when they sit down and meet, that's the Council of Ministers in its entirety, do really start to look at what is causing concern to the island constituents. And this was really the final catalyst that raised this problem, I suspect, has been the resignation of Laurie Hooper and the toing and froing of who said what and who knew what about which report. But it was not simply about that. As I say, it's been all these other industries who've been expressing concern and asking for a change in direction and not getting it. And that, I think, Andy and listeners, has been the big problem that wasn't discussed yesterday. They made it all about themselves. And it's not all about themselves. It's about the wider economic community on the island and their constituents. And I do hope that they stop this attitude of it's all about them. It's not. It's the greater island economic prosperity. We all know that we're spending more than we earn. There seems to be no end in the continuing expansion of government. Every other person you meet, what do you do? And you work for government. And I'm not an economist, but I don't think it can continue where we're spending the reserves at the rate we are. What happens when it's all gone, for example? There will be economic pain then, wouldn't there?
So, bearing in mind that obviously he's got 23 other members of Keys, there are 8 members elected into Legco plus the 3 ex officio, so 8 there. He's only got a certain number of people that he can perm ministers and members of departments from. So, bearing in mind he's only got what he's got in the team. How can something be done about this? Because the logjam needs to be broken, Stephen.
Well, wasn't there some recommendations from the Lord Lisvane report that said perhaps we shouldn't have so many departmental members, one minister and one other? Now in some you've got 3 and 4. That guarantees the inbuilt majority. Didn't the Lord Lisvane report also speak about more committees to examine policies of government? Has that happened? And I think this is some of the problem. We've got everybody, we've got ministers in the departments, we've got many members in departments, so everybody is part of government. And I believe some people are being threatened with expulsion from your department if you didn't support the COMIN line. So I do think there is more things to consider about the issues that we've got than simply towing the party line, or we've only got this number. I do know that we are, if you look at all the other legislatures round the Channel Islands and Guernsey, Jersey, lots of their legislatures are bigger than what we have. So perhaps that is something that we should consider. Should we consider using the Legislative Council more and possibly bringing in people from outside? Does it just simply have to be politicians in charge? But I do think that if we just ignore this and the businesses that I've mentioned and the industries, the various sectors that have raised concerns and say they've got problems, they have all got problems of how to survive economically. It's not a political decision that these people have been talking about, the farmers in agriculture, the hospitality, the business sector. They're not talking about political ramifications. They're talking about economic problems which they want to rectify to enable them to continue in business.
And there's the nub, Stephen, in that this is all about money. Do you remember 30 years ago, 35 years ago, you couldn't move for money on the Isle of Man. All the big infrastructure projects were being built. We were bringing in bricklayers from Portugal and Ireland all the time. And obviously now the money has run out. So has this government got the wit and the wisdom to put the rockets underneath our economy and get it moving again? Who's got the big ideas?
Well, I think one of the questions and one of the points used to be that you only use the economic levers of government on big infrastructure problems when the economy falters. And then government steps in to ensure that there's a basic economic baseline of spending that they are going to provide when the private sector can't take the slap up for various reasons. And I think some of this problem has been government's been too willing to supply money to various groupings to continue this ever expansion, and that's drawn more people into the island, etc. And now when we're having an economic slowdown, possibly the ability for the Treasury to use the economic levers is not there because they simply spent the money.
Crikey. Where do we go from here, Stephen?
Well, there's going to be tough decisions have to be taken, I think, to get some of our basic industries back online and back providing economic stability and employment. Okay.
All right. I appreciate it, Stephen. Thanks for calling today.
Thank you.
Good to hear from you. The democratic process has been followed, says 557. Everybody's had their say. The result is the result. Now I'd like to see us all draw a line under this. Bury the hatchet, stop bickering and all work together for the next 2 years for the benefit of the people of the Isle of Man. Bulletin points, says 382. Replace climate change funding. Replace biosphere jollies, reduce all government department spending on projects. Everything doesn't have to be a 5-star project. Get rid of qualified surveyors' prices on tender jobs. 3 quotes or the work can commence. Reduce constant spending on business days, like the 2 days at the COMIS. and make awards night for everybody every 3 years, not every year, and no wind farm, says 382. That's their bullet points to get the nation moving again. On the topic of firearms officers on the Isle of Man, says 278, I think people are being quite narrow-minded about the topic when they say we don't need them. It's not like we're the UK. It's not about that, says 278. It's about being ready for our version of those people that Mr. Foster mentioned, the Chief Constable mentioned on Monday, that guy called Derek Bird or Raoul Moat, and being able to react immediately. I've had lots of reaction concerning what Mr. Foster said on Monday regarding armed officers. How much would a small nuclear power station cost? And why don't we use the Kroger money to fund all this? Maybe too many conflicts of interest? Well, the Kroger money always seems like telephone numbers. If that is true, then what's to stop us using the Kroger money? Howard's with us now. Hi, Howard.
Good afternoon, Andy. Just a thought. There's possibly a question you can ask. I believe the Treasury Minister's on with you tomorrow. Several years ago, when he was party to the MUA, he had the idea of putting smart meters in everybody's house. It wasn't a choice like it is in the UK. This is going to be more or less mandatory. And he acquired £18 million to facilitate this. And this must be 3 years ago now. But only the ones that I know of have been done are either government-owned or, as in lots of cases here, council-owned. And they're the ones that's paying rent, paying on an ongoing basis as opposed to a contract. So they've replaced all those. But it seems to have come to a halt. Now, what has happened to the rest of the meters? What has happened to the balance of the 18 million? And what is going to happen? Because some of these meters that were being introduced are going to be obsolete very soon because of the change in 3G, 4G, 2G, and some of them were old and antiquated before not saying necessarily here, but before they were being fitted completely in the UK. So they were obsolete by the short time after they'd been fitted because of the telephone companies taking out the 2 and 3G, which these use for transmission of data.
Did you think they were a good idea?
Well, I can't see it'll make an awful lot of difference, but this is a prelude to the electricity being generated by non-fossil fuels. Non-fossil fuels at the present moment can give you 24/7, 365 electricity supply. Fuel by the proposed methods of the present government are going to be very, well, how can I say, slipshod. You don't know whether you're going to get electric or you're not. And this could well be instantaneous price rises. I can't see it going the other way, but they'd be instantaneous price rises because they can do it over if these are all fitted to houses. And this is maybe the thinking was behind Dr. Allison, that he has control of the electricity that's coming down your lines.
Well, I think you're right there. I can... I'll bet anything on the fact that electricity won't go down in price.
Oh, no, there's nothing. Well, it was farcical the way they've done it this time here. They put the price down, with great hoo-ha. But people didn't look. And the price of the daily charge went up. And there's 0.03 pence difference. So in other words, it's only gone down, well, the thickness of a pen nib, and that's about all.
Okay.
There's very little change in it. So, but the hoo-ha was that we're putting the price down for the domestic users.
Okay, all right, Howard, appreciate that.
One of the other things I was going to ask, what happened to I think I heard Ewan saying there's another one for a question from tomorrow, the 400 million that was borrowed, where has that disappeared to?
Okay, I'll put that on the list.
Okay, take care.
Good to hear from you. Thanks, Howard. How does geothermal work in blocks of flats, i.e. half the promenade, says Liz? Well, there are two types, really. There's geothermal to generate electricity, i.e. your source of heat, because obviously our closed-circuit gas turbine has got a source of heat, that's gas. What they do is use hot water from down the ground, and then they run a generator with that. They run a turbine with it, and that generates electricity. They also run geothermal for neighbourhood heating projects, and there's one particularly we've talked about before in Southampton that's been going since, I think, the 1970s or early 1980s, where they tap into the hot water and it runs neighbourhood heating. So there are two types of geothermal, one to run a power station and one to run heating. But it's always been said that it wouldn't work on the Isle of Man. But we don't quite know. UK generated 29% of power from wind last Friday, says Si. 29% of its electricity. That's true, obviously, but some days it doesn't blow. Some days in the summertime you don't get wind for 3 or 4 days. So it is kind of hit and miss. Obviously, we have our power station at Pulrose that will back us up, but remember, that's closed circuit. It has to be kept running while we're not using it to generate electricity. So we're using gas for something that isn't generating electricity. Also, if we have to buy electricity down the interconnector, that could cost a lot more. So that 29p, and please, I would urge you to focus on 29p per kilowatt hour. If you remember anything, that's what we're paying for electricity. What we're going to pay in the future. They spent over £40 million in Red Roof in Cornwall, one of the best geothermal sites in Europe. After 15 years, haven't been able to get out, says Rich. Send me a few more details on that. Is that true? Don't you think Stu Peters seems to be unsure in what he's doing? He sanctioned the purchase of lots of new expensive electric vans for the post office, and after buying them, basically states the climate change isn't a thing. So what's Stu Peters doing? It's either one way or the other. I think Mr. Peters needs to make his mind up.
You can get the best of everything, and the price is just as nice. Oh, I'm so glad we went to Pacesetter. The perfect shower, some great tiles, all the accessories we needed. They had it all. Amazing ranges from traditional to modern, many exclusive to Pacesetter. Get your bathroom on song. Visit the Pacesetter showrooms at Harris Terrace and Spring Valley.
You can get the best of everything, where the price is twice as nice.
Nearly as good as me.
There's monkeys and meerkats, penguins galore. You can meet with a panda, owls, lemurs and more.
It's half term and the Carax Wildlife Park is open every day. So book your tickets and experiences online now at caraxwildlifepark.im.
Walk through the Christmas wonderland at Ramsey Garden Centre for a magical range of trees, decorations, unique gifts and much more, including the widest range of indoor and outdoor lights. Christmas at Ramsey Garden Centre, open 7 days a week.
Looking for a safe place to grow your savings? Look no further than Skipton International. The Guernsey Bank is offering a 5% AER fixed rate savings account maturing 1st of October 2025 for deposits starting from £100,000. Additional products available. For more details on all of Skipton's savings accounts, just visit skiptoninternational.com or call 01481 730 730. No withdrawals allowed until maturity. Interest paid annually and upon maturity. Skipton International is licensed to take deposits by the GFSC and is a participant in the Guernsey Banking Deposit Compensation Scheme. See dcs.gg.
The Isle of Man is known as the road racing capital of the world. But have you ever wondered what it truly takes for riders to make it here?
My old saying, which I live by, if you want it bad enough, you'll get it.
In the Journey to a Dream podcast, we dive into the untold stories about the determination, skill and passion that fuel these riders as they seek racing glory.
It must have been a nightmare to work with and live with or whatever, because that was literally the only thing going through my mind.
I still go down Bray Hill and you're going, how are we allowed to do this?
Journey to a Dream, brought to you by Kawasaki Insurance, available at motorsport.manxradio.com or your favourite podcast provider.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
20 to 1. It's half term at the moment. Next Monday, pupils travelling home by bus from school will have an hour less to use their bus pass from next month. So from next Monday, the 4th of November, school cards SCH1 and SCH2 are only going to be valid till 5 o'clock instead of 6 o'clock. Bus Vannin says the 6 o'clock deadline was put in place to accommodate students who attended after-school activities, but many schools now close earlier, and Bus Vannin said it means most pupils are off-site by 4:15. The change means any student who gets a bus after 5 o'clock will have to pay a half fare. So if you're a parent or carer, guardian, you need to know that and be aware of it. SCH1 and SCH2 only valid until 5 p.m. And Juan's on now. Hi, Juan.
Hey, Andy. Sorry my computer link went down before, but I'm back on again now. I'm sure a lot of people will be not happy about that, but there you go. Just listening to, Howard had a point there with the smart meters. It's obviously for, you've got ultimate control then of who can have what electricity. You can power people down, power people up. I said this a long time ago. It's been done in other nations. So, if you don't want people to charge their electric cars for too long, then you've got the power to cut them down. So it's all on control and compliance. Stephen's point earlier on, I'll just go back to what I said yesterday: problem, reaction, solution. Yes, they had police officers there before that could go to situations, but they weren't visible. The thing about this is the visibility of it and where it's heading. So just on that point, my main point obviously was the theatre show yesterday. Everyone was, I think, would get wet on their own track with this. I've got to say that it's been a long time coming. Stu Peters actually made his point the other day in the media about how he felt about how things were going and our money situation. And Tim Glover is talking for the people that elected him, whether they say that he did or he didn't. The general consensus of most working people on this island is that government is disconnected from the people. And that's the consensus in many other places, I can tell you, that government are going willy-nilly, doing their own thing with their own agendas, and they're not talking to the people who elected them in. We've got numerous problems within our government. Is the Chief Minister responsible for all of them? Certainly not. Is changing the Chief Minister going to be the total answer? Certainly not. But the Chief Minister needs to get a grip on civil servants and the absolute massive expanse and growth of government. They blamed yesterday Lehman's, and they blamed COVID for all these here things happening. But that has not stopped what's been happening in the last 2 years of idiotic positions, stupid positions that's not needed within government, taking money from the people. The overspend of government and the reach of government is just too big. You've probably got now 1 in 4 people working for government, and most of them are in offices making laws and legislation, telling everyone else how to live and what to do.
So how is government going? How are they going to how are they going to cut down the size of government? I mean, when Alan Bell left, he cut down the size of government, and that was one of Mr. Bell's aims to do that. Under Mr. Quayle, it grew, and it's growing now.
Yeah, and again, the Quayle administration done us no favours at all, and Alf Cannon was part of that administration. You need a council of ministers in there, in the Coven, that's actually going to stand up and listen to the people that voted them in. And that's not what they're doing. We had 2 people there yesterday, among others, Claire Barber, who's saying, I will resign. Some people would say, in the state of DEFRA, resign. You've got Jane Poole-Wilson there saying, I'll hand my resignation in. Well, with the rafts and rafts of legislation that's going through the AG's office at the moment, some of it is not necessary, a lot of it is not necessary. Some would say, you resign. Tim Glover had a point, and he made the point of listening to the people on the street, regardless of what you think of him and how it went. What we seen there was a lot of people just doing their own thing and not coming out and having the guts to say what they think. At least Stu Peters and Tim Glover is taking on board what the people think at the moment. I've never seen for decades so many people on the island despondent of the way that this government is wasteful of money and where the direction that it's taking this island in. And like I've said before, some of these agendas, they're not agendas from here. And I'm not just saying it on this programme. I'm the one that stood up at the government conference and took the microphone and told them. I'll tell them to their face. You know what I mean? This is the time now when people need to get themselves together. And if they've got opinions, get on this programme, get on any programme. Go and get in council when these next elections come up. Take councils over and push back government. Because if you don't, you're going to lose the island that you love living on. Because it's changing drastically, and it's changing because, and I'll say again, this is not every civil servant that's in there. There's some good, hard-working civil servants within government that's working for us, but there's a nucleus of stuff in there that's going on that we don't need on this island, and we need people there in power now to stand up, start talking, because what's coming down the line you ain't going to like.
Okay, all right, thanks, Stuart.
Cheers, Andy.
And now David's with us on Mannin Line. Hi, David.
Hi, Andy. Just wanted to say that I listened to it yesterday and I was disappointed with the 6 that did vote against Mr. Cannon. I didn't see any ways forward for this cabal that's together now, which will be an irritant on the side of the government that's trying to progress things. But can I just say, as government as such, we have a batch of MLCs, members of the Legislative Council. Why aren't we using them as an organisation or a parliamentary group to tackle some of the issues? Halve them off from the Parliament. If these members of the House of Keys can't do stuff, send it up to the Legislative Council. There's plenty of time. They're getting paid as well. We're not getting cheap money from them. We need to use them more. And why shouldn't we do that? They're part of Tynwald. And can I just say that some of the issues yesterday there were, I think, just pure, as a citizen listening in yesterday, I just wondered, electioneering, is it a bit early for that? It probably is. And at the end of the day, it wasn't down to the Chief Minister and the way he operates. And quite rightly, some of the ministers said, well, it's a scar on them as members of the Council of Ministers. Some of the ministers did tell you yesterday, and I can concur with that they used to discuss issues. They used to put an agenda out. They used to put topics out. I don't know why they're not doing that, where the council ministers get together. And a big praise goes to our MHK for Uncan, Rob Collister. There's a person there that may have got certain issues and got things wrong or fell into some sort of trap there. But he was open and honest yesterday, and he represents the people of Onken. And I think that's what people like. But let's use these MLCs. And what's happened to the Bishop? What's going on there?
Nobody knows yet.
Nobody knows?
Not quite.
At all?
No.
Is she's coming to the island, isn't she?
Yeah. She's been inaugurated. Yes, she's been pontificated, but
right.
I don't know whether she's here yet.
All right. And what's happened to the Mr. Hooper's legislation on that now? Is it parked in the corner, or has he left it now? Has he gone into dark shadows? Because you can tell they're not going to do anything, are they?
All right.
There's this little Thomas little group is going to do nothing at all. They're just going to sit there and throw larger pebbles in the pool.
All right.
Seen it yet?
Good to hear from you. Thanks for that. 10-1 on Manx Red. Talking of pebbles, by the way, yesterday we were talking about, can you take stones? Can you take rocks from the beach? Well, the upshot is we don't quite know. Certainly in England you can't. And if you get caught taking big stones from beaches in England, I think under bylaws you can get prosecuted. Although I did hear one tale today of a lady who was flying away from the Isle of Man after TT and had got a bag full of rocks that she'd taken. Apparently she likes to take rocks from wherever she goes in the world. She took some rocks, had a bag full of them, and they were confiscated at the airport. I didn't know that, whether it's illegal to take rocks on the plane or whether it's just because she'd nicked them from the shore. But if you know, somebody also said apparently the only thing you can take is driftwood from the beach. But bearing in mind, look at a lot of houses and buildings that have got some rocks from the beach in there. Lots of pebble dashing has been done with stuff from the beach. After Mannin Line today, we're back in the archive with Kelly's Eye, and we're in Esplanade Mews. Peter, Kelly and David Callister look at a new build on Clarence Terrace. Later on, after Mannin Line today. Also, news from the steam packet. Due to unforeseen circumstances encountered at the berthing structure at the new Liverpool terminal, the docking process has been impacted. Means something's gone wrong. During the recent berthing trials with Manxman and Ben McCree in Liverpool, the steam packet company identified challenges to safely moor the vessels at various tidal heights, particularly at the forward end of the vessels. Oh dear, it's not going well. They're currently working with DOI to find solutions to mitigate the impact of these challenges. Is this AI? As a result, it's necessary to modify the timings of the Liverpool schedule from early November, that's next week, to the end of December to ensure safe and efficient delivery of Liverpool. So there you have it. At certain times of the tide, things aren't working with the Ben McCree and the Manxman. So tomorrow, we'll be talking a lot about the NI Fund with Alex Allinson, MHK. Dr. Allinson will be on, the Treasury Minister, talking about the fact that it may be gone, exhausted, finished, empty, barren in just over 20 years' time. The fund stands at £1.07 billion, and it's topped up every year by the amount left over from the national insurance contributions from working people. They paid the majority of benefits and for state pensions, right? It's been there since 1948, but life expectancy has increased, and people are claiming their state pensions for longer, government says. It's your fault for living longer. Over the coming years, Treasury says forecasts show that there'll no longer be a surplus available to pay into the fund. The warning is that instead, the situation will go backwards, money needing to be withdrawn from the fund in order to make up the shortfall in NI contributions. Now, if you've got any thoughts on this and you want to talk to Dr. Allinson tomorrow, then call, text, email and WhatsApp. It'll be interesting to hear what you have to say regarding this for the future. Everything is and always has been about money, says 376. We often say that on this programme, but it's true. If there's lots of money, then there's never any problem. But when the economic tide goes out, everything gets left on the beach, and we all start pointing at each other. Looking forward to Stu Peters' suggestion coming up in Tynwald next month. Common sense at last. We can't afford to be tinkering with green energy just yet. We're the size of a town, so our contribution is absolutely negligible. We need that money spending on our own people, says Liz. Have you got any thoughts about it? Well, chief executives are employed to run departments. Politicians shouldn't be in departments. COMIN should act as a corporate board with Tynwald input and direct chief executive officers on policy and finance, says G. I think they're called chief officers now. Didn't they change the name? The economy isn't in a terrible state. The issue is that we have to fund huge commitments for civil service pensions. This requires payment from tax receipts, now reserves. In reality, people need to pay more tax, says 612, especially on things like property ownership for investment. They should be raising plenty in stamp duty. Too many people on the island control too much property and put nothing back, says 612. That's it. Thanks to Chris Quirk on the phones. Back with the Treasury Minister, Dr. Allinson, tomorrow at high noon.
WINT. 60 years serving you as the nation station. This is Manx Radio.
Kelly's Eye, brought to you by Ellis Brown Architects.
Peter, what's Kelly's Eye looking at today?
Today, David, I'm looking at the gate and path that goes nowhere.
Directly across there's a building which looks as if it's been refurbished, and it has no, as it were, front door now, whereas the others in this terrace had.
Well, it never had a front door. It had a side door. There's a terrace of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Can that be right?
So are we looking at a refurbished building here?
No, we're looking at a brand new building. We're down on Douglas Promenade and we're looking at Clarence Terrace. Now, people sort of know the Esplanade, and sometimes they get which one is the Esplanade wrong. You start with the Central Hotel, or what was, then you got Clarence Terrace, then you got the Esplanade, which is the one with the two big pediments. So Clarence Terrace, designed by Robinson, who also did the Esplanade, and when built, they had this continuous first-floor balcony. So from French windows, which were put in from day one, you could access your own balcony. Now, what's happened here on the end house, which is presumably number 9, if I counted right, the whole of the property was demolished, taken right down. It was similar to the others. It had an outlet, and the outlet ran along the lane at the side, but it had a yard in behind. And what they've done, they put a steel frame up, and they've built new apartments. I think it says there 8 2-bedroom luxury apartments, occupying the whole of the site.
They haven't pleased you entirely with this, but if you do look along there now, it's not a bad effort to match the rest.
No, I would say 8.5 out of 10 for what they've done. But before we go, let's just have a quick look at round the side. All this gable now is a series of big openings, no doors, just big openings to take cars. But look at the front door. It's like a garage door on a single garage. You've got this marvellous big building now. You've even got apartments on the rear with balconies that admittedly only look into the side or the backs of some others. But what a letdown.
So it should be a grand entrance.
Well, the one that was here before had an arched head and a fanlight. What they've done is just squeeze this in, and no matter what they try to do it with mouldings or whatever, it'll never be what it should be. So I'm afraid, with all the bits that's missing off the side, probably -6, so that leaves us 2.5 out of 10.
Many of the most iconic buildings around the island have been designed by Ellis Brown Architects. Keep up with Ellis Brown today on Facebook or via ellisbrown.im.
Part of island life for 60 years. This is your Manx Radio.